Okay, it is that, oh, I hear the echo. It's that magical hour. I like the reverb. I feel like I'm in a 1976 disco. Now I've dated myself. I was only in junior high school. So.
Okay.
Well, I want to welcome everyone to the dig. And this is week number 13, which is pretty amazing. The reason that we started the dig, I think we've got the music going too in the background. The reason that we started the dig was really we're all kind of crawling out of our pandemic caves. Hopefully we won't be going back into them, which is a sad situation in some parts of the country. But the two things that we can really do together to build community is to break bread and share stories. And as I've said, I've only lived in Pueblo for 10 years. Sometimes it feels like I've lived here for 1,000 because the stories just keep coming and coming and coming. So tonight I'm really excited to have Rosina Sonntag here because I got involved in the Ghost Walk in 2016. And the Ghost Walk had asked me for about 5 consecutive years to open up the tunnels at Central Plaza because I lived in the historic Tut building and had my art gallery there. And it was a really interesting kind of discovery for me personally because in my basement I opened up a door which looked like a closet, and lo and behold was this entire tunnel network, beautifully constructed with granite foundations and brick. And so I said no for about 4 years consecutively. And then the last year that I lived in the Tut building, I actually said yes, but I made some rules. I said, I don't want the groups to be more than 25 people per group. And please make this stop the first stop because we didn't know how much time it was going to take. Well, some of the groups were anywhere from 50 to 60 people, and we had 4,000 people come through in almost 4 nights. So it was amazing. It was my first wake-up call to the importance of tunnels, because whether you're 5 or 95, it didn't matter. 5-year-olds are standing at the front of the line to go down, and 95-year-olds were remembering what it was like to play in the tunnels because they were there. That was the only reason they played in the tunnels, because they were there. So for those of you that are interested in hearing the latest updated version, on November 17th, the Concilia family has graciously offered the Union Depot, and on behalf of the Heritage Museum, I'm going to give a new presentation on tunnels, brothels, and bars. Oh my. And it's a really great presentation because we have some architectural and conceptual drawings of what we may be able to do in downtown using our underground and our archaeological dig. So I'm just going to present some really interesting ideas. But I want to introduce Rosina, and as I do with every week, I just want to read a little bit of background. Rosina has called Pueblo home for 16 years. She has raised 4 boys here with her husband, Peter. She is involved in the community as the chair of the Sangre de Cristo Art Center Board, chair of the Pueblo Community Health Center Foundation Board, a Rosemount Auxiliary Board Member, and a United Way mentor. Her degree is in theater from Whitman College, and she went on to study classical acting at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. Her most satisfying here is to work with high school students in musical theater. The Ghost Walk melds 2 of her passions, history and theater. And I'll let Rosina, I'm going to be in the Ghost Walk again this year. I'm going to be doing October 1st and the 8th. Frank Spicer, who survived the flood, he was in one of the planes, ended up floating on a rooftop down the Arkansas and discovered another survivor, and they found a crate of oranges. That's all I'm going to say. There's a spoiler alert. But anyways, I'm really excited. I'm going to be splitting it with Tommy Farrell. So I'm going to do the first 2, and it is hard. It's 5 consecutive weeks, and so I'm really happy to be splitting it. And It's, I think, one of Pueblo's greatest traditions. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Rosina, and she's got the show.
All right. So should I put that over there?
Okay.
I'll set this here. All right. Votes for women. Votes for women. Of you ladies planning? Yeah. Are any of you ladies planning on voting in elections? Yeah, I hope you are, because when you do, I hope you think of me, Jessie Haver Butler. I worked my whole life to pave the way for women's rights and women's equality. I was born here in Pueblo in 1882. My father was a dairy farmer, and I went to Carlisle Elementary. Yeah, I was always a very progressive little girl, even when I was young. In the 4th grade, I invited all my little friends from my class over to have a picnic, and then we went wading in the river. And, you know, first one little dress got wet, and then this petticoat got wet. And so I said to the girls, let's just take it off. That's what the boys would do. Why shouldn't we? And the girls were very nervous about that idea, but I led the way. And soon we were all playing in the water, having a fabulous time together. Well, needless to say, when they went home and they told their mothers what they had done at Jessie's house, I was not allowed to play with them much longer. But, you know, it sounds idyllic, but growing up in Pueblo in the late 1800s was difficult. It was especially hard for women. My mother, she died when I was 10 years old, and it was especially tragic because just 4 days before she died, my youngest sibling drowned in an irrigation ditch. And before my mother died, she leaned to me and she said, "Jessie, you are a very bright girl. You need to get an education." Well, this was all news to me because I had never heard that I was a bright girl before from her. But as you can imagine, on my mother's deathbed, her telling me that, it made a huge impression. And I was very lucky because I had fabulous teachers at Carlisle, and then I went on to Central High School. And when I was at Central, about 4 years after my mother died, I went to the principal and I said, "What is the best women's college in America?" And he said, "Well, Vassar is a great school, but that's for rich kids." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm not rich, so that's out." Then he said, Smith College is alert and forward-thinking, and that's a good one." I said, "Okay, great. I will go to Smith College." And he sort of looked at me. I don't think I looked like Smith College material to him, but I went home, and I got my dad to give me $10. I applied to Smith College, and at the age of 14, I left and went to college. And this was 1896. I was one of only 2 girls who went to college that year from Pueblo. That is a ghost walk story. Just a little bit of it, okay? Thanks. That's how it goes. Now, I'm sure that's a little bit different than what you imagine when you hear a ghost walk story. At least it was for me. That's actually the first story. It was in 2015, and Judge Kathleen Hearn Kroschel, she was in charge of it. She asked me if I would be in the ghost walk. We were on a board together, and I said, "No, I don't like even scary movies. I don't really want anything to do with scary things." And she said, "Oh, no. You have the totally wrong idea. The ghost walk is not about being scary. It is about Pueblo history, mostly." So, okay, here we go. I'm pushing it properly. I got a good tutorial on how to push this, and I think I'm doing it right. All right, here we go. So the ghost walk is really, in my mind, and this is why after the first year, I was just sold and wanted to be a part of it from then on. It's really a celebration of Pueblo, past and present. Past because we're talking about all people who have really made a difference in Pueblo, or who grew up in Pueblo and made a difference in the world. Or present, it's a celebration because how many of you actually been to Ghost Walk? Okay, so then you know. It is like, it's exactly how you want the downtown to feel every day. I mean, it's full of people and life and excitement, and people are walking and groups are going back and forth. And when you're an actor in it, it's like stunning how excited the people are to hear these stories, and they want to stay and talk to you about more about your character. And it just is, to me, the epitome of a celebration of a city. So that's what Ghost Walk really is to me. So as I said, Judge Kathleen Hearn Kroschel, she was on something called I think it turned off. That's okay. It's all right. So she was on something called the Domestic Violence Task Force. Now, actually, the whole first year that I did Ghost Walk, I did not even know it was a fundraiser. That to me is like the epitome of a great fundraiser, that you don't know you're at one because they're so painful so often. But this is a fundraiser for the Domestic Violence Task Force, and these are the current groups that are part of the Domestic Violence Task Force. So Judge Kathleen she was a judge for the 10th Judicial District, and so she had been, and they decided, now this was in 2004, they decided we need to come up with a fundraiser, what should we do? She was trying to think outside the box of how they would make money. And she had been to Charleston, South Carolina. And I guess in Charleston, South Carolina, I looked it up recently because I was just interested, they have like 3 different Ghost Walk tours. But these tours are like, you know, they have really old buildings and old graveyards being on the East Coast. And these tours are more scary tours, at least judging from their websites. They looked pretty scary to me. So she thought, why don't we do something like that? A ghost walk, but instead she wanted to focus, and so from the very inception, she wanted to focus on Pueblo history and not make it about a scare fest, but make it about Pueblo. And so that's how it began, and that's how it continues. Kirsten Taylor's right there. She's now in charge of it this year. Yeah, and she's with the Rape Crisis Center. Yeah. And it just works so well. So the Ghost Walk begins at El Pueblo History Museum, and then we travel through the city, mostly on Victoria, and then we end at the Heritage Museum. And I think being the beginning and the end being at such reputable museums kind of lends credence to the idea that it's about history more than about ghosts. And it also puts a lot of pressure on me to feel like I legitimately need to make sure this is correct history. And we try not to. Although I will tell you that if I have 2 options to choose from, I just choose the most dramatic story. So, like, if I'm not sure what the history is, I pick the funnest history. So that's how it works. But yeah, so that's how it goes. Now, we do so many different stories. I feel sort of guilty because when I looked over this presentation, I suddenly was like, I didn't put as many women as I should have, so I'm sorry about that. I just grabbed pictures, but here's some examples. So we try when we're planning, and we start planning pretty much as soon as the last one ends. We wait like 2 months, and then we start planning the next. And we try to always put, well, this year is very different. And as you might tell, there's flood pictures behind some of those past. This year is all Ghost Walk Flood Edition. So I will get to that at the end. I'm really excited about it. But in past years, it's sort of amalgamation of all different time periods and people that have affected Pueblo. So like, for instance, this one, I heard that Jeff Chostner was he had found his grandpa, this is his grandpa, Earl Chostner, he had found his grandpa's journals from World War I, and so he gave some lectures at 2 different libraries, and I thought, hey, I gotta get to that lecture because that sounds like the kind of thing we want. So I went and listened to his lecture, and he told all these cool stories about his grandpa. He was there on Armistice Day, and just really neat stories. And then this is Dale Servo. That is not the real Manasseh Mahler. That is an actor. And he actually played his own father. The first time he played a boxer, he played his own father, who was Marty Servo, the welterweight champion of the world, who came from Pueblo. And then he played the Manasseh Mahler later, because we thought, oh, he's a boxer kind of guy, he can do it. But anyway, these are just some examples of different. So this is Liza Boone. She came to Pueblo as a slave with her master. I can't remember his first name, Boone, and he actually created the city of Boone, right? And then he came on hard times, so he had to sell her to someone else who was Hamilton. And then she was there for Emancipation Day, and she was freed, and so she actually chose to take the last name Boone back. So she became Liza Boone. They actually, when she was buried, they called her Aunt Liza Boone because people loved her. And she made a difference in Pueblo. And she's buried in Roselawn. In fact, recently, maybe some of you know, they did a big ceremony honoring her and her burial at Roselawn. And I get a lot of our stories from the Roselawn book that they put out, because there's so many great Pueblo stories. And then there's an actor playing Babe Ruth. He came through here on a barnstorming tour. I'm just giving you like a couple ideas of the people that we do. This is Joseph C. Welty. Maybe some of you know Summit Brick. Well, he came here. This is the great-grandpa. He came. There's all these fun stories. In fact, it was super fun because my son started dating this girl, and she tells me, through just talking a little bit, she starts saying, I was like, oh, you're a Welty? And she said, yeah. I said, oh, do you know about your grandpa? And I started telling her great-grandpa, I started telling her all these stories, and she didn't know any of the stories. And I was like, because I had interviewed Tom Welty to figure out all these stories about his grandpa. But anyway, it was kind of just a funny thing. Clark Gable was stationed here during World War II, and apparently, the crowds were so crazy to get out there, all these women and girls trying to see him and call him, that the phone lines would get all blocked, and it was crazy because everyone wanted to see him. Eddie Hancock, we actually had the Pueblo Dodgers, which was a feeder team for the New York Dodgers. And so Eddie Hancock, now this is just 4 years after, what's the really famous 42 baseball player? Yeah, Jackie Robinson. Okay, so only 4 years after him, he is playing baseball here to be on the feeder team to go into the Dodgers. And he ended up loving Pueblo so much that he came back here, even after he went on barnstorming around, came back here. 2 of his daughters are track stars in our Pueblo Hall of Fame for sports. And then Dutch Clark. Everybody knows Dutch Clark, right? No explanation needed. Oh, I'm pushing. There we go. Okay, so the thing about the Ghost Walk is sometimes people are a little disappointed. Very rarely, because usually they come thinking it's going to be scary, and then they get there and they just totally dig it, and so they don't care anymore. But the things that the people really love to hear about, we used to do comment cards, and people would write the things they were most interested in. They always want to hear about the flood, so they'll be really happy this year. They always want to hear about the mafia in Pueblo, the tunnels, and the Thatchers, strangely. People are really interested in learning about the Thatchers. So so after I first started, then I kind of took over. I just basically took over the storytelling and the actors because I really was so into it. So I'd start reading these stories. So these books are the 2 books I read to prepare the story on the Carlino Brothers, who, when you read these books, it's crazy. It's like the Colettis, the Maros, the Bassinos, everyone, all these names that you're like, oh, I know Kathy Bassino. Oh, I know Coletti's. This history is so rich for our town. And these 2 guys, so this book, Colorado's Carlino Brothers, was actually written by the grandson of Pete Carlino. And they, after their parents were both killed, because they were both murdered. In fact, Vito Carlino came from Sicily with 4 sons. All were shot down. And then, I can't remember his first name, but Deanna, he also came from Sicily with 4 sons. These 2 had a vendetta against each other in Sicily and then brought it here. and 4 sons, and they too were all shot down. I mean, when you read these books, it's like mind-boggling, the time and how it was here. And anyway, this is Pete's. So they all moved to California, right? Because they had to get out. Like the one mom, Pete had 6 boys, and they had to get and move to California in 24 hours, or they were going to get in some kind of trouble more with the mafia people in Denver. So anyway, these guys, you'll see. Oh, there they are. Okay, so here's Pete, Sam, their big thing. Well, these guys will tell you. You guys come up here. These guys are going to read the script that I wrote about the Carlino Brothers. The hard part is taking things out because you have so much you want to say after you read all these books. But, you got to just take stuff out. But if you guys make your way up here. So this is Joe Roma, the little guy. And he was actually the mob boss in Denver. And so they had taken over all of southern Colorado, and then they went up and they were greedy and wanted to take over Denver too, and that's where they ran into trouble. So these guys will do here you go, guys. I don't know how, I don't think this really, maybe it does. It doesn't seem to fit. Oh no, it does, okay. Okay, you.
Italian, we're not tall.
Hey, speaking for yourself, huh? Hey, why did the mafia guy cross the road? Don't worry about it, huh?
Why don't mafia boys like Jehovah's Witnesses? Mafia boys don't like any witnesses.
What do you get if you cross the Russian mob and the Italian mafia? Killed!
What do you call a dodgy neighborhood in Italy? A spaghetto.
What do you call an Italian with his hands in his pockets? Quiet. That's the funny stuff, huh? But we aren't Italian. No, we're Sicilian. Big difference.
Big difference.
Sicilian, and we ain't the mafia. We're a sugar beet to farmers.
Farmers and businessmen.
Hey, I'm getting to that. I'm a Pete Carlino, and this is my little brother, Sam Carlino.
We came from Sicily, and we was kids in the 1900s. Pueblo is a lot like Sicily. Lots of Sicilians ended up here.
The Dana brothers, the 4 Dana brothers, may they rest in peace.
Our papa hated the Danas. And in Sicily, he hated them even more. And we hated the Danas in Pueblo. It's just the way it was.
A Sicilian never forgets, and it never forgives an offense. That's just the way.
Too bad the Dana farm was right across from our farm in Vinland. Too bad. Let's just say it didn't make for good neighborly relations.
So, in the 1916, a beautiful thing happened here in the Pueblo. Any idea what that was? Prohibition! Yes, 4 years before the rest of the country.
Boy, gave us 4 years to get a jump on the competition. Do you think that everyone just magically stopped drinking when Prohibition hit?
No, they did not. It just became illegal. And we had to find the creative ways to get our sugar beet product to market.
Our family, our associates, basically had control of the whole market here in Southern Colorado. If it weren't for those Dana brothers.
Yeah, the Dana brothers, always getting in our way, trying to gain control of our city, our associates, our business.
Frank Bacino had this soft drink parlor on first. When Prohibition began, all the saloons turned into soft drink parlors. Soft drink parlors. It was really just a cover for the Dana's liquor operation.
Yeah, we had a Pellegrino Scalia's market on Elm Street. That's where we passed our product through.
Until the Danas murdered Pellegrino.
That was at the beginning. The Dana shot up Pellegrino and killed the neighbor boy he was with.
The Danas.
Pellegrino Scalia's murder was a big deal. There had to be a meeting of all the U.S. Mafia heads to settle things in New York City.
Yeah. Unsanctioned hit. You can't just kill whoever. There are rules to these families.
So that's it. We knew what we had to do. A Sicilian takes care of things himself. We don't trust to the law and we don't talk to the law.
We don't talk to the law. Nobody talks.
The Danas had to be erased. It took us 10 years to do it, but we did. We started with Frank Bacino, the Dana soft drink parlor cover man. And we ended with, finally, the last Dana brother, Sam.
The last brother hid out in his house in Vinland. He hid out with his 5 kids and all his brother's kids who he had already taken care of, never coming outside without cover for 3 years.
The vendetta was finished when we finally tricked him into meeting an associate in a Bessemer.
Used his own gun on him.
So, vendetta kaput. We had a time to further our family's interests now. With the Danas taken care of, we had a total control of all of southern Colorado.
The only place to go was up. Up to Denver.
That was our mistake. Why didn't we just stay down here, where we were living like kings? Why?
You tell me, Pete. Why didn't we? You wanted more. You wanted control of Denver. You wanted to oust the head up there. You thought it would be so easy.
Hey, I had 6 boys. I wanted to open up the world. 6 boys.
Well, that's not what happened. Nothing went how you planned. We couldn't get control. We were getting shot at left and right. You were an idiota with money.
I know. I finally had to blow up on my own beautiful house on a Federal Boulevard in Denver, just for the money. My beautiful home flattened.
Don't worry, no one was inside. We had all the people in balance out.
Didn't work. Minga, nobody believed it was an accident. It was the beginning of the end for us.
Yeah, the beginning of my end. I ended up shot dead, lying in a pool of my blood in my own living room. Shot by what I thought was an associate, Bruno Morrow, that two-faced lion scum. Jimmy Coletti shot right alongside me. He survived to not tell the tale. A Sicilian never talks.
Sam, I should have been there for you. I wasn't the brother I should have been. I was gone in New York City, protecting our family's interests. With the cop of the copy. Then I had a meeting in Chicago. Al Capone was on. I hid out in Kansas for a while. Didn't do me no good.
No, they got you in the end.
I went down to Pueblo to visit some associates who were in a prison in Canyon City. Well, I left for Canyon City, but I never got there. My car was found off of the road in a ditch, just to pass a Wetmore. My body was dumped further down the road. They could have barely recognized me. My body had been there for 2 days, but somebody anonymously called the Pueblo police and told them where to find Pete Carlino.
And now you know the story of the rise and fall of the Carlino Brothers.
A Sicilian that never forgets and he never forgives.
Nice job. Thank you. That's awesome. That is awesome. It's a fun story, and I'm telling you, like 3/4 of their story is not there because there's just so much material to try to take away. That's kind of the fun and the hard part about doing it, is figuring out what to say. But it's crazy, all that stuff. They blew up their own house. I mean, they actually did it twice in California and once here, but we couldn't tell that. I mean, it's crazy, the stories. Now, this is another guy I brought. We are actually a super cool city. We all know that already. But we are one of the only cities in the United States that claims that a black man began our city. That has happened in other cities, but they don't recognize it, and our city does recognize it. This is James Beckwith. Now, he actually, during his lifetime, this is the book he wrote about his own life, and Kennedy is going to come down and read it for you guys. This was a fun story. I think most of the talking is in the script, so you got it, Kennedy.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Do I look like a liar to you? Don't answer that. Well, that's exactly what people have called me for years. Me, James Beckwith, a legendary mountain man, Crow Indian chief, explorer, guide, trapper. I guess people used to have a hard time stomaching that a black man like myself could truly be all those things. But I'm the real deal. I published my autobiography, Life and Adventures of James P. Beckwith, in my lifetime. Pretty much everything I wrote has been proven to be true. Of course, there's a few things that might have been slightly exaggerated. But to a mountain man, the only sin is the sin of being dull. And that I never was. I was born in 1800 in Virginia to Sir Jennings Beckwith and one of his slaves. My father was a fair man. Not only did he educate me like a legitimate son, but he went to court 3 times to acknowledge a deed of emancipation for me. He wanted to make sure that his son was a free man. Well, I had a restless spirit and longed for adventure. I started learning the trade of blacksmith and found it rather monotonous. An adventure called. I had a strong desire to explore those celebrated Rocky Mountains and the great western wilderness. Well, I traveled west with a few different parties, and the most notable being Captain William Ashley. I was a wrangler for his expedition to explore these mountains. The Indians soon became very friendly to me, and I was indebted to them for showing me their choicest hunting grounds. Yeah, those were the days when you heard stories of pioneers and people settling the Old West. Oh, but I smile in comparison of their suffering with what myself and other men of the mountains endured. The forts that afforded them protection were built by ourselves, and we were in constant peril amid Indian tribes nearly double the size of what they became, without wives, children, to comfort us on our lonely way, without well-furnished wagons to resort to when we were hungry. Yes, no roads before us but trails, our clothing consisting of moccasins and skins of animals. These sufferings made their accounts seem trivial in comparison. Now, during that time, a story began to circulate in the West that I was actually the long-lost son of a Crow Indian chief. The story had been that I had been abducted by the Cheyennes and was sold to the whites, where I had been raised ever since. Well, one day, while setting some traps in the fork of a stream with Jim Bridger, I blundered into a Indian horse herd and was immediately captured by their guards. While I was being marched off into their village, Bridger, watching from afar, saw clearly that he could be of no help to me and went back to our encampment with a tale of my certain death. Well, while my friends were lamenting my untimely fall, I was being hugged and kissed and loved on by a whole lodge of near and dear Crow relatives. Even if I could deny my Crow origin, they wouldn't believe me. Well, how could I dash their joy? I went on to distinguish myself as a warrior and won the rank of a Crow war chief. I married 8 wives during my time with the Crow. I perfected one of my most valuable skills, stealing horses. I yearned for adventure. I went to battle in the Seminole Wars in Florida, chiefly because there was an opportunity for the renown. I was a civilian employee to the Army and hired as a master teamster, and I found those years generally disappointing. The Seminoles had no horses worth stealing, or I surely would have exercised my talents for the benefits of the United States. Now, I suppose you've been wondering. This man is fascinating. But where do we come in? What does this fine fellow do with Pueblo? Well, my friends, after traveling the Santa Fe Trail a bit, I ended up in Taos and shackled myself to another woman, Louisa Sandoval. I took my wife and we reached the Arkansas in 1842, where I erected a trading post. In a very short time, I was joined by 15 to 20 trappers with their families. We all united our labors and constructed an adobe fort. We soon had grown into quite the little settlement, and we gave it the name of Pueblo. This city, Pueblo, I recognize the beauty of its situation here next to the Arkansas. Now, I would leave periodically to take care of business, and upon returning to Pueblo, I found home was not quite the home I had left. My wife, when I came back, had married another man. Well, When she realized her mistake, she offered herself back to me, and I politely declined, preferring to enjoy once more the sweets of single blessedness. I was a wanderer, always searching for the next opportunity, for adventure, fame, and really couldn't be tied down to one family or even one city. I went amongst many other adventures out to California and discovered a pass that cut off days of travel for pioneers. It's been named Beckwith Pass. I was a guide to one of the first groups who used my pass in California. Oh, one little girl, Ina Colbreth, who was in the first group, took and recorded her adventures this way. I was the first of the covered wagons to break the trail through Beckwith Pass into California. We were guided by the famous scout, Jim Beckwith, who was a historical figure and, to my mind, one of the most beautiful creatures that ever lived. I'm just reading what she said. He was rather dark and wore his hair in two long braids, twisted and colored cord that gave him a picturesque appearance. He wore a leather coat and moccasins and rode a horse without a saddle. I guess I made quite the impression on that little girl. And I hope that I've impressed you with this fascinating story and adventurous tale of the man and this fair city.
That was awesome, Kennedy. Thank you. Most of that I actually took straight from the book. He wrote so much. And so in italics in his script, it's like a ton of it was his, like all the, that he declined her offer and he enjoyed single blessedness. Like that was all his words. So anyway, okay. So some of you know, so the big thing about Ghost Walk is kind of deciding how scary we make it, because people do want that little, exciting shiver. And so usually we'll throw in La Llorona. This is La Llorona, and this is a fabulous actress who just started doing it this last year, and she was really great. But that's about as scary as we get. And so we'll usually throw in some folklore, and that's one that we'll do. So it's not strictly historical, but it's historical folklore to our city. So like Pigman, the Blue Lights, and the Arkansas, different things like that. So it's kind of a big deal because sometimes some of the people on the committee are like kind of more excited about making it scary, but then I'm trying to work to make sure it's historically accurate and not too just hyped as scare, but like a celebration of Pueblo rather than scary. So anyway, that's kind of our thing. Now this is a story we did in 2017, and there's actually an awesome little museum that's only open on Tuesdays at the, it's not called the Insane Asylum anymore, but that's what it was called back then. And it's only open on Tuesdays. You can go from 10 to 4. They have incredible stuff there, and the woman is very helpful. Well, so sometimes we do stories of locations, so like Memorial Hall or different places, and then we create a story around that. Well, this story, she kept pulling out all these intake papers that the doctors had filled out, and it was all for about middle-aged women, and they usually didn't have children, and their husbands had admitted them to the insane asylum. She showed me at least 4 of these from this period, and if their husbands said they were crazy, then they were crazy. And that's how it worked. And they would say on their intake papers, you can read it, that she can show you, it would say climacteria, which they finally decided is basically menopause. Like the husband was admitting the spouse because she was menopausal. So we took this story, and so it's not like a direct person, but there were about 4 women who were admitted, and we try to add as much truth in it as possible about the insane asylum, because that was a real favorite. So Judy will do this story for you guys.
It's the stuff of nightmares, shattered lives, broken dreams. Screaming cuts the night like a razor in the city of the damned. I left Ireland a courageous, joyful young girl. I died a lonely, bitter, angry woman who couldn't tell fact from fiction. My name was Bridget. My husband will remain even more anonymous because he sent me here to get me out of his sight, to die, to be buried in an unmarked grave. I was one of 155 nameless, faceless souls, unknown, unloved, unclaimed, at the Colorado State Insane Asylum. My diagnosis? Menopause. My husband had me committed when I was 43 years old. I was suffering from climacteric. It's what you call menopause. Oh, I was crazy with hot flashes and mood swings. I was fine one minute and outrageous the next. I tried black cohosh, didn't help. I tried opium tincture. It helped a little. But then I needed more and more and more. My husband couldn't take it. So he called me an opium addict and sent me to the asylum. I had a jury trial. It was humiliating. Listening to my husband and my friends and my neighbors call me crazy. But in my day, if a man said you was crazy, you was crazy. The asylum opened in 1879 with the arrival of 11 lunatics. By 1897, there were 422 of us, 11 attendants, 1 physician. I was there with people driven mad from syphilis. Some had epilepsy. Oh, it was horrible watching the staff strap them down in the middle of their fits. They broke bones. They caused open wounds. Some had mania. Some had melancholy and never moved. Had dementia. They saw things and heard things that others couldn't. How do you live like that and know what's real and what isn't? In 1914, they started to build the tunnels. 3 miles of tunnels, 7 feet wide, 9 feet high underneath that asylum. They used it to send steam heat to the buildings. They transported patients and food. We used to sneak down there, steal food from the carts. We hid down there for weeks. They chained patients to the walls. Even today, there are reports of whispers and footsteps and screams. When I first got there, They'd let anybody on the grounds to gawk at us. Can you imagine? But then they built a fence around the grounds and only family could visit. Nobody ever visited me. We didn't have any children, and my worthless husband never came. And I hadn't seen my brothers and sisters. I know I wasn't crazy when I was committed. But when I died, my body went to that unmarked grave. But my soul went not to heaven or to hell, but to the tunnels with all the others, there to terrorize the staff. I've been robbed of everything. Now all that remains is to await my chance for peace in the underground.
You're awesome. That was great. She's awesome. She does whatever. She is so talented. And actually, she took what I wrote and made it 1,000,000 times better, which is nice when the actors do that, you know? So, really quickly, this year, if I haven't inspired you to do it yet, this year, I am absolutely, ridiculously excited. Because it's the 100th anniversary of the flood, we're doing all flood stories. They're all new, so we're not repeating any flood stories that we've done before, like, the telephone operators, or Lucky the horse, or Carmela DeRose, who was stuck in the flood, lost for 3 days. We're not doing any of those stories. They're all new, and we actually, I think I had 15 I had to narrow it down to just get to 10. So they are incredible stories. These are the books that I read to prepare them. And then, The Night of 1,000 Heroes by Tracy Beach is exactly the kind of book we need for Ghost Walk, because it focuses just on the people during the flood. And so it was inspiring to read that and so as you know, everyone's seen these pictures, but it's just stunning. And I hope as you go through the Ghost Walk, you'll get a real sense of how the people felt who were stuck in the flood, because I had no idea. I just couldn't have. 2,000 of these trains, cars were all over the place. 2,000 in the area by the time the flood was over. That's, Bingo Burgers, right there. That's Central Plaza now. Yeah, that's your old building. So anyway, it's fascinating. And I thought at first, I don't know, we might have to it might not be exciting enough. And soon I started reading these stories, and it became clear that I didn't have to do a thing to make this or the people any more exciting about the Pueblo flood. So I hope you are excited to celebrate Pueblo past and present. And this year it's about the flood. Other years it's an amalgamation of other stories, but it's going to be quite the walk this year. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah.
So do we have any questions? Questions?
There's a ton of the books that I talked about at the Heritage Museum. A lot of the books are there. And otherwise, I just got, Night of 1,000 Heroes I got on Amazon. I just started, you can just start tons of books, or call me and I'll loan you. I almost brought them because I was like, I should bring these books, yeah?
Hi there. I heard that after the flood, there was a mass grave out at Rosemount Cemetery. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Is that something you're going to be
We don't deal with that during the walk, but yes, there was a mass grave, and actually some students, I think at Boulder came down. School of Mines came down and they were checking just this year to confirm the mass grave. Yeah, they have no idea how actually died because of record keeping and different things at the time. So,
plus, it's the three tragedies. So it's the Eden train wreck, it's the 1918 pandemic, it's the 1921 flood, and each layer, there are 3 layers. So if you go out now, there's a beautiful angel, and they've actually, it was beautiful. I was there for the ceremony. It's gorgeous. If you've never been there, it's very, very powerful, very powerful. Questions? Everyone wants to go to the Ghost Walk.
yeah.
As I said, I'm going to be doing the Ghost Walk on October 1st and 8th. And I actually did Joseph Welty, which we talked about a little bit about Brick, an amazing story. I mean, the man, unfortunately, and actually, I own a house on the east side, on East 8th Street, which was Alfred Crowell's original residence. And this week, Shane Jarrett, who's an amazing masonry expert here in town, was working on the top of the chimneys, and he pulled the bricks off, and they said pressed brick and tile, which was the business that was started in 1902. So it's kind of surreal that all of a sudden Summit Brick is there. I paid Joseph Welty, and when I did the Ghost Walk, that was consecutive weekends, and I think it was the 3rd or the 4th weekend, I had 4 generations of Weltys standing in the background, and I was terrified. But at the end, they invited me to any future family reunion, so that was really nice. So, no, Ghost Walk tickets. How do we?
They're on Eventbrite. I have some posters. You can do that little thing on your phone. What's that called?
QR code.
The QR code. There's a QR code to get tickets. And they do sell out. Now that we do them online, they sell out pretty. I mean, you can get it throughout it, but probably by the 2nd week, it'll be sold out.
And I planted a seed because, like we're doing with the Dig, all 15 of these presentations are going to be published this holiday season in a volume 1. And I planted a seed to Rosina. I think we should publish a book on all the ghost stories that we've done.
Yeah.
Which I think would be a really great addition to the materials that we have. So, but no, there's a lot of other events that are happening too with Keating Junior High School. The Goodnight Barn on October 10th, it's a Sunday, they're going to be opening up the Goodnight Barn for the first time since it's been renovated. And they're going to have the chuck wagons there, because if you were here for the second Dig talk, Laurel Campbell talked about Charles Goodnight, and he invented the chuck wagon, which is the predecessor to the food truck. So they're going to have longhorn steer there, they're going to have the roundup, they're going to do all of that. That's on October. It's free, but definitely contribute if you can. And then Damon Days is right now, so, and I left some of those on the tables. And then November 17th, again, is the talk that I'm doing on the tunnels. And you can get those tickets on Eventbrite. It's $5 for members, $10 for non-members, but it's going to be in the depot, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So you saw the building in the flood that you just showed. That was where I discovered those tunnels the first time, and it was pretty eye-opening for me. And if you start talking about the state hospital, if you start talking about downtown and the neighborhoods, Goat Hill, which has tunnels, and then of course the Carlino and the Dano families. I mean, all of this, really elevates. I mean, I just think Pueblo is the thought leader when you talk about speakeasy culture. So that's what the Dig is all about. So I want to thank everyone. We have 2 more sessions. Just to let you know, next year what we're doing is we're going neighborhood by neighborhood. So we're going to visit each neighborhood for 4 consecutive Wednesdays. And we're going to start a task force. So I'm going to send out, if you bought tickets, you're going to get an email, because what I'd like to start in October is just a working group to talk about what neighborhood should we go. I've received 72 requests from different speakers to speak. That's a lot of speakers. That's a lot more than we can handle. But I just love the fact that there are so many people, many who don't even live anywhere near here anymore, but want to come back and tell the Pueblo stories. So I encourage you, next week I'm doing, my second talk will be on Marion and Della Knuckles, and then the last one will be Reagan Foster talking about news as a community asset. and we'll have some fun news to announce then. But stay tuned. If you'd like to help out in these task force, it'll be a lot of fun. We're going to have fun doing it. So thank you again for coming. Thank you.
Thanks.